my understanding is that particular part, and I think we're going to be driving out there. There's a bike ride coming up tomorrow, so I like to just lay my eyes on these things, and a lot of times they're practical things that you don't see if you're just looking at the document. So what I've seen in terms of that is that that is also used for delivery trucks turning over onto Webster, and the businesses over in Webster have their issues with now you're going to impact our delivery, you're going to impact our customers, you're going to do that. So on a lot of these questions, it's very easy to say, well, yeah, I'm for it, and I do everything for it. I know what the right answer is, but that is why I said I would have to look at the feasibility first, lay my eyes on that project, and see if we can work out with the business owners whether or not we can really, whether it's truly viable, or we're going to have a large negative impact that we don't see. So that's why I answered in that way. And I look forward to laying my eyes on it tomorrow, and a bunch of us. Saturday.
Does anybody want to? Yes, Stuart.
So that intersection from Central going down to Peyton and Seminole High, it's an important intersection. And I have heard, as a small business owner, and I have a lot of friends who are small business owners along Webster Street. I hear their concerns. It slows down traffic, it's bad for business, delivery truck. But I think they're forgetting that cyclists are customers too. They're paying customers too. And pedestrians who walk along Webster can shop and dine on Webster. My priority is the safety. As the kids go to Encinal, to Peyton, they walk, they bike, they ride, I want to make sure they're safe. Because that has to be our number one priority.
Thank you. All right, at this point, if nobody's going to spend another, did you want to spend a minute, John? Okay. For CASA. All right. So I'm going to start with Robert. Hey, hello everyone. I'm Ruth Hamby with Community Action for a Sustainable Alameda. We are celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. Formed by the City of Alameda and stakeholders who participated in basically the task force that created the local action plan for climate protection. And some of them are here tonight. Stand up. The purpose of CASA is to help the city implement its local action plan for climate protection. And this year, because the City Council showed leadership of moving forward to update our climate action plan, we are in the process of doing that update. And next week, we have 3 workshops, as Brian mentioned. They're really important to go to because these are community listening sessions. This is where you get to give your input on what you would like to see that will address things like sea level rise, climate mitigation, other things that are really important because very important decisions are coming up at the City Council. So that's my little preamble. So we sent out a questionnaire to all of the council candidates in advance, and then you guys, some of you have a little tiny booklet that have their responses, and then a little committee of CASA people met to do follow-up questions. And because, we're kind of, not as hard-ass as Bike Walk Alameda, we gave them their responses, their questions in advance, so they could kind of mull it over and think about it. But in terms of Bike Walk, we are so appreciative of the partnership and the leadership that they've shown on pedestrian and bicycle issues over the many years of their existence. And we really appreciate the partnership that we're working together on this forum because it turns out that transportation is our #1 greenhouse gas emission source. So if Bike Walk Alameda is successful, CASA can go out of business. So yay, Bike Walk. The first question is for Robert, and we've seen this, so you'll have a really succinct response. In response to our question about transportation, our #1 emission source, you expressed support for restoring and improving shuttles to the ferry terminals and across the estuary. Our business community supports the development of a free shuttle. What funding strategies would you recommend, and is the Emory Go-Round shuttle in Emeryville a good model?
And thank you for that follow-up question. GABA, I think Greater Alameda Business Association, shows what good community organizations do. Sometimes you gotta kick the politicians in the pants and get a good thing going. And so they said, we're tired of waiting around for this. We're going to take the bull by the horns and we're gonna do this. Trish did a referral and referred Wendy Silvani, who was largely responsible for the Emory Go-Round. And Emory Go-Round, and for those that might not know, it's a free shuttle that is paid for by the business community. So relevant to the point, we don't have Pixar in our backyard, and so they have some funding options. But I was encouraged to see the business. I'm a small business owner. I'm in the Park Street district. I pay a special assessment to be in that district. I was excited that the business community stepped up and said, "Hey, we pitch in some money for a free shuttle around town." And I think that we're going to need to partner and find more funds to be able to do that. So I think it's going to have to be a blended funding. You've heard all the dire financial situation we're in. We don't have that money. We've gotten some money from SB1. That's largely for pavement projects. We got some grant money from ATP and ACTC, but those are kind of already spoken for. Tony Kuttner, I have spoke to him, and we're going to have continuing calls on this. They're very active, they're working hard, and we're going to have to try to put together different pools of money to go by. Unless we can find Pixar 2 to come through, we're going to need to find more funding from different sources.
Great. Oh, sure, Stuart,
Our last forum, we talked about this. A free shuttle to the transportation hub, the BWA station, the ferry terminal. But that's only one part of the equation, getting people to, like I said, the hubs. But what about the efficiency of the BWA station? The ferry, AC, transit. We need to work with the different agencies to make sure that the ferry service is on time and there's enough bike ride, safe, secure parking lot for our commuters. Because 70% of the commuters to work are to Oakland, San Francisco. If we can find a way to bridge that commute from Alameda to the hub, we have one problem solved. And the other solution is to make sure that the efficiency and the efficacy of the mass transits are also in place. More service from AC maybe? Who knows? I've taken Esri Crossing many, many times in my life, and I love it. Why can't we bring it back and expand on it instead of discontinuing it?
Robert, did you want to respond? Is it okay? Okay, sure. Is that recording to the rules, Brian?
Can I spend on my own question?
All right, he's responding. Mr.
I just want to be clear, the shuttle, the free shuttle that they were talking about, that is not just to the main ferry terminals, it's all over town. And I was a Little League coach in basketball as well, and there are a lot of taxi moms that are out there saying that would be a nice thing to have too. So I could put my taxi duties aside, and it would all of it lessen traffic there. So significant challenges in terms of the funding, but I think if we put different pools of money together, we can get it done.
Okay. So Tony, the next question is for you. In response to our questions about transportation and sustainable development, you expressed concern about folks with limited income. Can you describe how Alameda should address the needs of the most vulnerable in our community who may be more impacted by displacement resulting from weather-related emergencies and flooding?
Well, thank you very much. Remembering back 14 years ago when the Katrina disaster happened, clearly we came out of that with an understanding that oftentimes places, neighborhoods that are low income and perhaps even predominantly persons of color have deficiency with regard to their infrastructure that places them at risk in times of emergency, including natural disasters. And it's altogether possible that that's also the case in Alameda. Historically, we know that the west end of town, particularly west of Webster Street, as well as the northern waterfront area around Buena Vista, Pacific Avenue and up. Historically, that had been a low-income area. question that the city must do is that, track infrastructure spending in these neighborhoods relative to infrastructure spending in any other neighborhoods, but also track the quality of infrastructure that's being done. So for example, when we do street resurfacing, we have different levels of street resurfacing. Sometimes we do a complete street resurfacing, sometimes we just do patchwork. In what neighborhoods are patchwork type of infrastructure improvements being done? In what neighborhoods are the sewer systems being completely redone? And I think as part of the community improvement budget process, that we should begin to track by neighborhoods and by a cluster of neighborhoods, where are we spending our infrastructure and where are we deciding to do quality infrastructure versus, fly by the seat of your pants type of infrastructure improvements that saves money in the short term but ends up costing a lot. Because at the end of the day, issues with regard to disasters, emergency planning, and the unequal way in which disasters occur really comes down to being an infrastructure-related question. So that's certainly one way that City Hall can begin to address infrastructure deficiencies and how emergencies affect particular neighborhoods and communities in different ways. So I think that's first and foremost the most important thing is begin to inventory and track how we're spending our money and where.
Great. The next question is for John. In response to our question about sustainable development, you suggested that new developments should be required to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips. How can the city measure the results of these requirements, and how can the city hold developers accountable for not implementing or continuing to fund the required strategies?
Yeah, so this is a great question. Back in the mid-aughts, as the chair of the Transportation Commission, I worked with city staff to start requiring new developments instead of allowing additional traffic and figuring out how to build our roads even bigger to accommodate that, and then rushing everybody to the tube where nobody can get through. We started requiring our developments to reduce the amount of traffic that they generate. And just about a month and a half ago, September 4th, the City Council received the first report from the Alameda Landing project, which was the first project we passed as a city under these new guidelines. And we found out that almost two-thirds of the people who live in that development are not driving to work by themselves. They're taking transit, they are walking, they are biking, they are carpooling. So first off, we're doing this and we're succeeding. And it's being done with shuttles, it's being done with information, it's being done by really encouraging people to consider where they're working. We are watching this in terms of we're surveying people, so they heard from over a third of the people who live in the development as to how they're getting around, and then we are also monitoring the use of the shuttles, etc. They're going in and out of the center there. For certain developments, the larger ones, we can actually require the developers to put down tube counters so that we can count how many vehicles are going in and out of those developments. But I would say that we need to require this. We are requiring it now and showing success. And basically, I think more than anything, we need to be really championing the reports that are being done and holding people to account when they aren't following through.
Great, so the next question is for Jim. In response to our question about transportation, you identified the goals and strategies included in the Transportation Choices Plan, which was approved by the City Council this year. What can we do in the immediate short term using our existing bridges and tunnels to reduce single occupancy vehicle traffic to Oakland? And so, for example, what policies or programs would help you to reduce your single occupancy trips through the tunnel and bridges?
Well, carpooling is probably the best way to reduce single occupancy for me personally. But if you look at the transportation plan, there are some things that we can do right away, and we're actually doing a lot of these. I mean, we talked a little bit about the Alameda shuttle. That's something that, actually staff left that out of the Transportation Choices Plan, and the business community and the council made them put that back in. So that's how that got back in there. We're working on our bicycle master plan. We're doing Easy Pass expansion. One of the things I'm most proud of is that we're going to add a third terminal third ferry terminal in Alameda, over at Main Street. Over at Alameda Point. So that's something that's going to be done hopefully within 18 months. And that's probably our biggest way we can reduce traffic in and on and off the island through the tubes and the bridges, because that's our biggest asset, I think, is the water. We talked about water shuttles, and earlier there was a comment about that with as far as developments, but the ferry is underutilized. And thankfully the voters passed RM3, which is expanding ferries. So we are going to be able to meet some of these immediate goals or these near-term goals almost within 2 years. Bike share, thanks Robert for the shout out on that, but I did a referral on bike share. And if you look at the bike share statistics, the heavy use times are during the commute hours. So people are taking them to and from the ferry stations or to and from the bus stops. And I think that's a great plan that we have. If you look longer term, we talked a little bit about the other crossing, bus rapid transit at Alameda Point. That's another thing that we're working on right now with Site A. As far as funding, none of this stuff comes out of our general fund. We have aggressive staff that goes after funding. We have federal programs, Federal Transit Administration programs, Federal Highway Administration grants. We have One Bay Area grants. We have U.S. Department of Transportation Tiger grants. We have our local Alameda County Transportation Commission that helps fund these things through Measure B, Measure BB, Measure F, the vehicle registration fee. We have Cap and Trade. We have Caltrans that does a lot of funding. The state of California through SB1, so we want to vote no on Prop 6. So there's all sorts of different things we can do to help fund these things. And they don't come out of our general fund. They come from these grant programs, and they come from asking our developers to help mitigate the traffic that their developments ultimately will bring to the island.
And Robert, you want to respond? Using one of your cards?
I'm very spending. I'm just going to spend it to make, because I just have this great stats. Jim did the referral for Line Bikes, and Liz Warmerdam sent over the stats, and I thought the stats were amazing, so I'm going to spend just on that. 88,500 rides, 25,000 unique riders, in a town of less than 80,000. They're averaging 6,700 to 8,000 per month, and the best stat of all, 100 plus complaints in the very first month of implementation, tapering off to 4, going towards the end. So it took some getting used to, and the kids have to learn how to park them a little bit better. My son, I bought him this great bike, and we spent all this money on the bike. He prefers Line Bike. It's there, it's easy, so that was a waste of money. But so the kids have learned a little bit, they park it a little bit better, but those are great stats, and those are great ideas. It should not be about personalities of people, it should be about great ideas for the city of Alameda, and Jim, that was one of them, and we owe you for that one.
Great. Oh, we got Tom that's using his card.
Not going to rebut. Jim listed off a lot of the things that we've talked about. One of the very low-hanging fruit things that we can do if we're really worried about congestion and getting people to stop driving across the estuary and also reducing the greenhouse gases is we can start providing better no-emission connections to BART. Some great news. In the last year, Alameda was in the top 10 of cities for transit growth. But some of that comes from ridership on BART. And the dirty secret in Alameda is that a lot of people drive from Alameda to BART. So we can actually have a lot of people using transit, but still also congesting and polluting as they cross the estuary. We have a bridge. Getting to BART, walking and biking is a very unpleasant thing. And Alameda, not Oakland, is the problem side. We need people who can start identifying real issues and low-hanging fruit and start actually pushing for really quick, low-hanging options to start really giving hundreds of people actual safe connections to the places they want to get. So, time's up.
So the last of the CASA questions for the first round is to Stuart, which is, in response to our question about sustainable development, you have proposed a controlled development at a pace that we can handle until we reach capacity. So what does capacity mean for Alameda? Are there other island communities that you would look to as models, such as Vancouver or Hong Kong?
Thank you for that question. Controlled development means responsibility. development. And I'm not proposing, number one, I'm not a sustainability or population expert. So I cannot tell you, is it another 5,000, 10, another 20,000 residents? I don't know. That will be up to the expert to tell us. But what I have is, I have an opinion on what controlled growth or responsible growth is. It's based on what we currently have, our infrastructure, our transportation capabilities. If we have a majority of Alamedans are stuck in a grid, going to work every morning, that's not a good thing. We need to also find out how we divert some of our waste. Is it through recycling or a combined gray bin? There's a lot of issues involved. One thing I can tell you for sure is, I do not want Alameda to be another Hong Kong, where they're charging $4,000 for a shared bed. Not a bedroom, a 3-staff bunk bed, and that's not quality of life. So, no, we do not want to be Hong Kong, not by any stretch. As far as sustainability, I think your organization, I really tip my hat to. I mean, look at sustainable development and growth. I think that's what we are trying to do, make sure that we can handle the growth that we have. And we have several thousand homes in the pipeline. Alameda Point has 1,800. The Encinal Terminal is coming up with a few hundred homes. Drawing a blank here, I know there's quite a few more that's coming up. But I think at that pace, we can accommodate, but at a responsible pace.
Tony, are you gonna respond? Okay.
For all the progress that's been made in terms of alternative forms of transit in the city of Alameda, the reality is that the traffic, morning traffic through the tubes, through Posey or on Park Street Bridge is getting worse, with the prospects of it even getting more worse. So I think what we have to do is we have to slow down the overbuilding that's underway. And while alternative forms of transit are necessary, they are not, unfortunately, sufficient. So we do have to have some kinds of strategies that ties building with available capacity through either the tubes or through the Park Street Bridge or even the High Street Bridge. Because the reality is that, you know, I used to always have the rule of thumb of get out of Dodge by 7:45 a.m. But once the 200 or so units were built right next to Alameda Landing, it's changed now to 7:30. And you know, when we build the other 1,500 or 2,000, what then? So we have to tie traffic with available capacity.
Okay, we got another one, John?
So I think we need to be really clear here, and I understand that Stuart and Tony have been on the council for a little while, so they may not realize that state law changed last year. And we cannot put a moratorium, say we're gonna stop development, try to slow down development and throw up things in the way, in the way of building these houses. You know, Tony mentions now that somehow the traffic has magically gotten a lot worse going through the tube, but actually I've got the actual counts we've done since 1990, and we're still at the same number of cars per hour that are passing through the tube. In 2012, 2013, there isn't a giant spike. What's happening is the way in which we use our roadways, and what's happening on the other side of the estuary is impacting how we get off the island. The state will not allow us to say the traffic is bad and therefore we cannot build more houses. And so anybody, the Princess Bride has a quote that I really like, right? Life is pain. Anyone who tells you differently is selling something, right? Government is hard. Anybody who says they're going to stop housing is selling something.
Or actually, send it the other way. I'm starting with Robert this round.
So Robert, going back to the bike ped bridge, you said that given the city's unfunded liabilities and deferred maintenance costs, that you thought that a water shuttle was a more economical solution. Please describe the water shuttle service you envision, how it might be funded, and if you think a water shuttle would be as effective as a bridge in getting cars out of the tube.
The water shuttle, water taxi idea that I have is when you come over, and it's not, by the way, my wife and I were walking down by the estuary, we saw this, and I thought this was my great idea, that I'm coming up with this idea. And what I did is I went back as I was going through the documents, and I saw that they did a whole estuary study on it in 2009. They described what the project was, they gave some project parameters, they gave cost, they gave all of these things are already there. So this has been collecting dust, just kind of sitting there. And so the idea that I think is exciting is that if you go into, if that right lane, which is just wide open there, you shoot right down there, and you get down towards the back and you go to the estuary. There's sufficient place for some parking down there. The shuttles that are going to improve could be another way to access those. And all the estuary developments that we have already have all the landing pads, and they envision that within the planning process, that we ought to have a way for those water shuttles and taxis to go up there. So that is, in terms of the idea, that is the basic idea. WIDA has said that they could do that. They would have to make some changes to routing. They can do that. In terms of funding, it's $2.65 billion. That was in 2009 dollars. It might have gone up. Everything usually does. And there are other pools of money that we can access to get that. It wouldn't be, I don't think it would be a fully funded city project. I think we could partner and get some transportation funds there. I'm not sure if that covered everything within the question, but it is, again, and I want to reiterate it, this is not on the council, this is not on our to-do list. It's medium priority, it's number 16 on the list of 39, and for some reason, it didn't get put on that work list, so I want to get it back on.
All right, thank you. Tony, next question is for you. Speaking of WIDA, WIDA is subsidizing driving by providing free parking at the ferry terminals. Transportation experts say that it's going to take both a carrot and a stick approach to get people to change how they get around. Would you be in favor of charging for parking at the ferry terminals in order to encourage people to drive less? If so, what would you like to see that revenue spent on?
No, I'm not in favor of charging for parking at the ferry terminals, either the new ones or the Main Street or even Harbor Bay. I think instead of charging for parking, the city needs to go on a strategy to educate residents in terms of getting them to double up, perhaps, or work with the regional transit agencies such as AC Transit to fund shuttles that get to the ferry terminals in a manner that allows residents to easily get connected to the ferries. So no, I'm not in favor of charging.
Thank you. John, the next question is for you. Regarding the city's goal of getting more people out of cars, you've served on the city's Transportation Commission and the Planning Board. You've also been on the county's Bike Ped Advisory Committee, and you work with the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency. Based on this experience, what do you think are the barriers to getting more people to choose transit, biking, and walking instead of driving? And if elected, what would you do to lower those barriers?
Really glad I didn't waste 1 minute card on the last question. The number one thing that causes, or that encourages people to drive is free parking at their destination. So in our downtown areas, we already charge for parking. Parking comes with a cost. In order to get people to use transit, like ferries, etc., and not drive to them, we're going to need to make sure that we're charging for the parking and the actual cost of the driving of that choice, and putting it into options like better biking and walking, biking and transit to those locations. We know for a fact from many studies throughout the Bay Area, the state, and the country, that the number one reason people choose not to bike is not because it's inconvenient, not because because they might get sweaty, but because they don't feel safe. Our city has been going one street at a time every 5 years and thinking, hey, let's try to make that street just a little bit safer. We've been holding off on doing a bike plan, and I think we need to look at having our new bike plan create a safe biking network where families with 10 and 11-year-olds feel safe putting their kids on the streets and letting them ride across town to visit their friends, like many of us did when we grew up. We can do this. You don't have to bike to like this plan. You can like the fact that the street, the neighborhoods get safer. People like to live in neighborhoods where it is safe to bike because it means they don't have cars going past their houses at 45 miles an hour, typically. We need to be working with AC Transit. Our buses are full to capacity as they leave the island. I ride on them every morning across the estuary, both on the Park Street Bridge and through the Webster Tube, and there is almost no room to stand. It is an unpleasant thing going when you're on the freeway. It is unpleasant getting to downtown Oakland, and until we get more buses running, we are not going to be successful at getting more people onto that transit. And then ultimately, I'm very proud, we have a third ferry terminal at Seaplane Lagoon, because when I was on the Transportation Commission, I fought not only WITA, but also the City Hall to make sure that when the state took over our local ferry service, we required WITA to provide us with a new ferry terminal and to run service to that. At one point in time, our own mayor, 3 or 4 mayors ago, was fighting against the idea of having this, fighting against this. We need to start planning our transportation for the city we want in 10 years and 15 years in terms of transportation, and stop saying that it's really hard and there's no money and we'll just kind of dick around the edges and somehow magically everybody's going to change their tune. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, the next question is for you. During the council discussion for the Cross Alameda Trail, you made the motion to add the mid-block pedestrian crossing, even though that was not part of staff's initial recommendation. And during council's discussion of Central Avenue, you voted to request that staff look at safer options than what was originally presented for the section from Washington Park to Peyton Elementary. How will you support our next city manager and staff in being more forward-thinking about transportation issues?
Well, thanks for calling those out. I appreciate that. I wouldn't use my card if I didn't know you were going to bring those up. You know, that's like the $100,000 question, right? I mean, I think that has to be our job as a council member to make sure that we listen to all of you. And when we made those decisions, it was you all, like Walk Alameda, that were the loudest voice in the room, the most sanest voice in the room. So I really appreciate all of the public comment, all of the meetings, all of the activism. And I thank you for doing this today. You know, I don't think we would be in the midst of revising our climate plan if it wasn't for groups like CASA pushing the city to do this. So we depend on you, our constituents, to push us and make sure that we advocate for the right things. So, and I think, you know, it's important that you elect people that are going to advocate for those things. So some of us have different opinions. Some people may share those opinions. Some people may have opposite opinions, but it's important to make sure you elect people that share your opinions, and it's important that you elect people also that can help support them so they have 3 votes, because it's going to take 3 votes. So I think it's important for the council to be strong when it comes to setting policy. I think it's important for the council to stay on staff and make sure that they meet these deadlines. I mean, just an example, we had a minimum wage thing we heard just this week that came as a referral 2 years ago. I mean, to me, that's kind of ridiculous, because we were trying to do something that in advance of the state raising their minimum wage, yet now it's been delayed for so long that we either have to not do it or make it really hard that our businesses are complaining. So it's really, you know, it's incumbent on us to listen to all of you, our constituents. And just since I think I have a minute left, right, I did want to touch on some of the things that John mentioned. You know, one of the first things we did as a council when I was elected was bring Line 19 back. And that's going to help with congestion along the North Aurora front, because that line goes right along where all those new projects are. But what I wanted to do then, but maybe the time wasn't right, to make sure we had bus service to the ferry station. So that's my next priority when AC Transit expands, is to make sure we get bus station to the ferry station. As far as ferry parking, you know, that's been an issue we've been tackling at the city for the last 4 years. We opened the O-lot, so there's more parking over at Main Street, because if you've ever been over there, you know, the cars are lined up in the dust, and you know, it's just untenable over there. And then we helped resolve the issue at Harbor Bay because the neighbors were having overflow parking in their neighborhood, and that wasn't good for them. So we worked with all the different HOAs to make sure that, we restricted parking. And we do things like having shuttles from over by the golf course parking lot and over from the parking ride. So I do think charging for parking at ferries, even if it's minimal, I think it's a good start.
Stuart, the next question is for you. Stuart, regarding the Central Avenue redesign, when you were on council, you supported and voted for the shoreline redesign. In response to our written questions, you said that you do support redesigning some streets from being designed specifically for cars to being redesigned for all users. What will your response be when you get pushback from some of your constituents about losing parking spaces and loading zones when you support this kind of street redesign?
The design that we made over the South Shore is for multimodal vehicles, including bicycle, cars. I'm proud of it. I thought it turned out really well. The bike path and bike lanes that we have are protected. Now I see kids, older seniors who can and are able to bike right along the shores. The complaint that I think that you're referring to are from people who are complaining about a lack of parking. As far as the parking issues, I thought we had mitigated some of the concerns. That certain hours or after hours, they can park there. So I do not think we will get a lot of pushback unless we were talking about the issue that just came out this evening, the Webster Street crossing, where the business owners are complaining of possible delay in traffic with their loading and unloading. But as far as even Fernside turns out really well. I live along Fernside Boulevard, and I am very proud every morning I get up and I see, and when I walk the dog, that our bike paths are protected. I think instead of being too concerned with pushback, we should encourage more about bike corridors, bike path, and put that into our master bike plan. Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone want to spend a minute? All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Ruth, who's going to ask a round of CASA questions.
Okay, guys, this is the last round, so look alive, all right? After this, we're gonna have closing statements, and then we're gonna have plenty of time to mix and mingle and give Donna some action there back at the bar, so stick around, all right? This is gonna be in random order, so, look alive. This is for Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hi.
In response to our question about sea level rise, you identified the 2017 amendments to the general plan. Who has been at the table when considering the responses to sea level rise, and who's not been at the table? And how can we get Alamedans to support the kinds of infrastructure bonds or other types of fees to address sea level rise?
Well, it sounds like you were surprised by that answer, so I don't think you were at the table. So that's a problem for me. I look back at the staff report again, and I look back at the planning board minutes, and there was a planning board work session on these amendments, and there was also a planning board meeting. And in the planning board meeting, or both of them actually, there were no public comments. So to me, that tells me that was a staff-driven process. And again, I did want to thank you, I thanked you in the last answer, but I do want to thank you again for pushing on the climate action plan. Because we need to make sure that you all are engaged in these things. We all live here. So we need to have a say, and it can't be a staff-driven process. As far as the infrastructure bond is concerned, we have about $300 million in unmet infrastructure needs, and we were floating the idea of a bond that would have covered maybe a third of that, and then maybe a third of that would have been left over for sea level rise. And by sea level rise, we're talking about flooding and adaptation, we're talking about pump station repairs, we're talking about levees, or lagoons. I mean, that's one of our front lines of defense. So I would like to see we either do a bond all for sea level rise and make sure we spend that $100 million on sea level rise, Because to me, again, it goes back to value stating. I mean, this is our World War II, this is our moonshot of our generation. This is gonna happen whether we like it or not. So we have to be able to adapt to sea level rise. You know, these amendments that you talked about, you know, we're adjusting to 50-year sea level rise, we're adjusting so we can make sure we can withstand a 100-year flood. But you know, that's only gonna get us through 50 years. So we need to make sure that, you know, we start planning for this for the future. So like I said, I think this is the moment of our generation that we have to tackle this. And one of the things I wanted to do was a wetlands mitigation thing. You know, wetlands is a good, a good way to deal with sea level rise because the water can come in and come out. And also what we could do with the wetlands mitigation is we could actually sell those mitigation credits. So other people like the VA that was going next door, even other Caltrans projects or other projects can buy those. We could actually make money on it. I mean, think about that. We can make money for the city and at the same time help save our environment and help us adapt to sea level rise. But staff didn't want to do that because it was too complicated. So I'm not going to give up on that. I think we all have to continue to march on City Hall. I like it when you all come. I like seeing your faces at the city council meetings. Because I know when you're there, you know, I'm going to hear someone that has the same values as me. My colleagues are going to hear people with the same values as I have, and that we're going to get things done for you.
Great. Okay, Random Order Stewart, your question is, in response to our question on sea level rise, you suggested looking into seawalls to protect our coastlines. Have you considered other solutions such as restoring wetlands and depaving some areas of our coastline?
Thank you. Of course I have. But when we talk about sea level rise, it could be 18 inches in 50 years. I've heard 24 inches by 2050 is happening, whether we like it or we not. The thing that I am more concerned with is how do we stop the greenhouse gas effect? It's a global issue. It's not an Alameda issue. It takes a global fix. We need to work with the other communities on how to reduce our carbon footprint. Locally, there's a lot we can do. I mean, we can require, on a policy level, require new developers to put in energy efficient appliances, solar panel, rebates on their washer and dryer, LED lights, or, should I say it, LED certified buildings. Yeah, it will cost money, but in the long run, it will help mitigate some of the greenhouse gas. Then down to the sea level rise, it's going to happen in 50 years, in 100 years. The wetland is good. This is a long-term strategic planning. And depaving and planting more trees, of course, I am for any alternative solution to slow down the sea level rise and the impact that it will have on our island. We are an island. And we haven't even talked about some of the natural disaster. We're along the Hayward fault line. Sea level rise, natural disasters. We need to be resilient as well. And lastly, also, I mean, this is fairly common sense. Smart building, smart construction. Don't build along the seashores. And when you build, please build on a higher clearance so that you can take into account some of the sea level rise. And basically, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
So, we got a response from John?
I just want to point out that the question asked about very specific things. How is a council member going to consider and propose specific solutions? I think that really is the role of staff. But something that a policymaker can do, as an example, is 3 years ago, our city's position on sea level rise was that it was a global issue, a state issue, and that the city couldn't do anything about it, and we should wait for the region to deal with this. As a policymaker on the planning board, I actually got staff to rechange that to the fact that we're an island. We need a seat at the table. We have more at stake than any other city in this entire Bay Area, and that we need to actually be a leader rather than sitting around and waiting for somebody else to follow. Month and a half later, report comes back, and that's what it says. We need people who can understand, A, what the role is of the body that they are sitting on, B, can see the problems that are coming before us, and C, really put forward effective things that can start moving our city in the direction we want to go. We can sit around and talk about, and I appreciate that you know, Jim's wetlands mitigation bank was a really good idea, but time's up.
So the next question is for Robert. Robert, in response to our question about the SFA ecosystem, you expressed concern about dredging and contamination. As dredging of our estuary is already being done regularly to maintain navigable water transit routes, what means and methods might we pursue in Alameda to mitigate harm and remediate contaminated sediment that is currently being disturbed in this process? Would you support the city's use of the Earth's natural filters, such as shellfish, sea vegetation, to help clean the bay?
I have the sexiest follow-up questions from CASA. One is on dredging, and the other one is on storm drains. So, super sexy stuff here. My dad was out at the base a long time ago, and he told me when he came here and went to the Hornet, he loves to work on cars, I love to work on cars, and he said that what used to happen is the mechanics would just basically take all the metal parts that need to be degreased, they would put, shake it around with some acetone, do that, and just pitch it right into the bay. And that's how it used to happen. And what happened is, my understanding, and doing a lot of reading in this, is that now all of that contamination is put under many years of sediment. So there are some problems. If there's an earthquake, that could be a problem. So it's kind of locked down there. And for that reason, we have difficulty with developing shoreline, because once you start driving up highway or doing any kind of bark tube or doing anything like that, you are going to dredge up, you're going to bring up all of these heavy metals and materials. So with respect to the dredging that we're talking about, there's dredging that we do to maintain navigable waters, so the ships can get in and out, and that's kind of low-grade dredging that happens. And my understanding is there's two ways that we actually deal with that. One is we do in-bay fill. We take that dredging and we actually go down over to Alcatraz and Carquenes and San Pablo, and we just put it in a different part of the bay. The other way that we deal with this is we put it in a landfill, which is very expensive and not a good option. So what some new options are, what they've been talking about is similar to what's been talked about in other things. Recycling that, using that, treating it, and using that to help restore wetlands, to help shore up our levees, to try to make some use of this dredged up material. With respect to the large projects that super dredging, it's possible if we were talking about a bark tube, that's originally how this came out, it'd be very disruptive. I mean, we finally have whales within, within the bridges, and that would be very disruptive. So in terms of the other project, really quickly, the wild oyster restoration project that's underway here in Alameda, and that is another natural way. My understanding is that we used to have quite the oyster beds, and we don't anymore. So yes, I would support both of those things as dealing with these problems.
Tony, the next question is for you. So in response to our question about zero waste, you did not express an opinion about how to implement the requirements of our mandatory recycling ordinance. And we have, just to clarify, we have both a county-wide mandatory ordinance for commercial businesses and for multifamily, but our city code also requires proper sorting for residents and businesses. Can you share your thoughts about that? And you did not support a recycling center at Alameda Point for hard to recycle materials and other things that we can't put in our car. Do you have suggestions for other locations or other strategies for diverting recyclable materials that are not accepted in the blue cart? And these would be things like styrofoam blocks, window glass, rigid plastics, electronics, and furniture.
Well, in terms of sorting, hard to deal with recyclable materials, I would certainly have our city work closely with our current recycling provider. They're the professionals, and they have the resources and the assets where we could hopefully deal with the difficult recycling products. So that's the first thing. In terms of mandatory recycling ordinance, the city of Alameda, we basically generate roughly 45,000 tons of waste, I believe, that can go to landfill. And, we've been doing pretty well in terms of diversion. Overall, I think our diversion rate is now 79% or so. And I think we're successfully doing things when it comes to single-family homes. They have a 70% diversion rate. But the difficulty, though, is in multifamily homes, where there's only 30% diversion rate, I believe is the number that was in the reports. So if that's the case, what that tells me is that the city hall has to work closely with property owners of multifamily housing, and that there has to be relationships between the owners so that we get them to begin to deal with the recyclable in the manner that we would hope, so that they go above the 30% rate that they're going in right now. So that's the first thing, is to make sure that we're working well with the property owners of apartments or condos and triplexes. I think in terms of businesses, we also have to work closely with businesses. We can't dictate a business responsibility. We need to work with them, because I think when we're working well together, then we will be able to achieve the targets that we have for businesses. But I think the most important thing is for City Hall to build a trusting relationship with the multifamily apartment owners as well as with businesses, because that's where we need to improve our diversion rates. Because right now we're doing well in single-family homes, but we're not doing well in the other two categories.
Jim, you have a response?
Thank you for that question. I'm glad I have an opportunity to speak on it. Tony laid the statistics right. We're doing good with single-family homes, but not so good with multifamily and commercial. And some of us, or all of us on council, sit on various county boards, and I sit on Stop Waste, and I'm actually president of the recycling board this year. So every month I go to meetings and we talk about how to do this all the time. And I will tell you that we're better than Berkeley, so don't let anyone tell you that we're not. But a couple of things we've done, on the Stop Waste Board, is we expanded the plastic bag ban to restaurants and big box stores. So we had the state, or the original ban, and then the state put one in, and then it got referendum and it passed. But then we expanded it. We in Alameda, people laugh when the mayor brought a referral for banning straws or for straws on demand, but yet the governor just signed that bill today for the statewide. So Alameda was the beginning. And what I like that idea, but I took it one step forward when we did the actual policy, is that I decided we should only have compostable containers coming out of our takeout residents. So I was happy to work on those things. Restaurants, sorry.
Oh, we got one from Stuart. All right, Stuart, you got a card.
Diversion of waste, an important component of the waste diversion is recycling. So I am fully supportive of a hard-to-recycle center, but if we can couple it with information and program activities, like a rain catchment program, or a rainforest, or even make it fun, and with little native planting programs, I think it can work, because there's a lot of us that we face that dilemma, that we don't know where to bring our hard-to-recycle products. To have it right here on the island makes it so much more convenient for our residents. And at the same time, I also like the idea of the exchange zone, or we can bring it into the center, stuff that we want to donate, and pick up stuff that we could use at home. Why not make it more interactive than just, it's a dump site for you to bring your recycled product. Make it more fun with programs and activities.
Awesome. Okay. So this last question on this round is for John. Any new developments in
a big question. I think I would challenge the suburban style approach. I think we've really changed the way we're doing development in Alameda already to get away from that. Most of the most recent planned approvals all incorporate commercial, some retail, often neighborhood serving retail, as well as housing in those areas. This is the vexing issue that that developments and developers and cities all face. You can't just build a neighborhood and say we're going to zone 2 places for a laundromat and coffee shop and then expect that those places are going to open up. We have tried that, not just in Alameda, but in other places, and it doesn't work very well. One of the ways in which we do it, we worked very hard on this, was in the North Park Street zoning plan that we put together, which was to start moving the city away from exclusionary zoning, in which you start writing zoning and say these are the things that can't be here, and you start, these are the things only can be here, and you start talking about form instead of function. So you start developing up. The only way that we're going to really create something that is going to have new commercial and neighborhood retail serving spaces is if you allow people to live above that. And in Alameda, that's really, really difficult. We have been forced by the state to identify some places where we can allow that, and almost all those places are currently planned. But I think that really, instead of the city trying to say, we want this thing that, we want a private landowner to provide healthcare, to provide childcare, etc. What we need to do is provide the space and the requirements for how that space can be used, and then allow the market to drive that. Again, I think we've done a good job of that in North Park Street. We have yet to see that start moving forward, but we do have some ideas that are moving out there. I'm going to leave it with that.
Awesome. Any more cards? Oh, we got a card. Robert?
I don't want to leave anything on the table. I'll make it very quick. The idea that we're going to build our way out of debt is not a good one. My understanding is that when you're talking about residential development without commercial, it's a net drain on the city's resources. So we can't build just residential housing and have that solve the problems that we're in. We need these mixed-use developments where there are mixtures of business and residential in there. We need to kind of business our way out of this debt. We're not going to just build more housing and have that solve the problem.
Okay. Oh, one more card. Jim.
Got 2, I might as well use one of
Why
them.
not?
So, I mean, if you look at the bigger projects that we've approved as a council recently, we had Alameda Point, which is a mixed-use development. We have residential, commercial, retail. We're trying to attract a large commercial tenant over to Site B. Hopefully, we have rocket companies there now, so that's kind of cool. I didn't think we'd have that 4 years ago. We had Alameda Marina, which we were able to build housing and still maintain our maritime commercial business. And I think John and David, who's sitting in the audience there, were 2 key players in making sure that that project was a project that was able to get past 5-0. And then we have Encinal Terminals, which we just passed this week, which is a similar mixed-use project, where we have housing and then we have Tidelands area that's reserved for commercial maritime or Tidelands use or hotel and commercial. So I think we're doing a lot of good things on our mixed-use, because every project is different, so there's no cookie-cutter solution, which is why I like the current MX zoning designation, and I like what we've been able to do with it on these 3 exciting projects.
Great. Any more cards? All right. We're going to move on to the final round, which is the closing comments. Again, we'll be in random order. And basically, we just want to thank the candidates for your very thoughtful responses to the questionnaires and your very thoughtful responses to our questions tonight. But I just want to give you the opportunity to talk about these or other issues that are important to you. So we'll start with Stuart.
My name is Stuart Chen, and I have served on many different public offices here in Alameda. I believe a good council member is someone who is independent and open-minded, willing to listen and learn from his community. Here are some fun stats. Alameda is a cycling community. There are close to 9,000 bike rides in our city, and about, well over 25,000 individuals who own and ride bicycles. My past performances and voting records will show that I have taken the time to listen to you and your interests. I have been a supporter of a safe and complete multimodal street for all of our residents and visitors. I have supported efforts in the past to increase the safety of our cyclists and pedestrians through protected and expanded bike lanes and paths all throughout our city. As we approach the year 2020, the redesigned Central Avenue, along with the bicycle pedestrian safety improvement on Webster Street corner, will most likely come before the council. And the new council will have to address the Webster Street crossing. As a business owner, I understand the concerns and the issues on all sides, and I'm willing to start the dialogue with the business owners. My first and foremost priority is the safety of our children and students as they bike and walk across Webster Street to Payton and to Encinal High. I am willing to start an open dialogue and discussions with business owners along Webster Street. Let them see the value of increased business, sales from pedestrian and cyclists, as well as let them understand that cyclists are paying customers too. I've done 2 years on the hospital board and 2 years on the city council. I understand policy, I understand working well with our staff is vital and important to running a city government. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Tony, are you ready for your closing comments?
Well, thank you very much for hosting this event. I really appreciate it. You know, I genuinely believe that the role of a council member is to understand what are the needs of the various stakeholders in our community, and to, as best as possible, strike a compromise and build consensus that allows our city to move forward and move everybody forward. And as we deal with, whether it's climate change issues or as we deal with our safe streets, those are skills and those are ways of doing business that have to be taken into account. For example, if we're going to do redo Central Avenue to improve access of bikes up down Central Avenue in the direction of Encinal High School, we will have to work with business owners on Webster Street to understand what their needs are and figure out, what's the best engineering to strike, to accommodate the needs of the businesses, but also to provide a safe crossing for the bicyclists. Those are the trade-offs that are involved in I believe, in being a city council member and moving our city forward. It's not easy trying to bring the various stakeholders together, but I think in the end, the final product is better, and everyone is better for it. Our community is better for it. We do have, as an island, we do have vital climate change issues that we have to address. There are issues like building on where the Encinal terminal is at. Do we really want to build residential housing in that area, given the climate change issues? And as we all know about what happened in Katrina and what's happening right now in the Carolinas, where we're building in areas where maybe we should not be building. I believe the Sierra Club at some point in time was very concerned about building residential on the Encinal terminals for that reason. So if we're going to be serious about climate change issues, we have to really explore those and strike, reach some trade-offs. Finally, I do believe that within our city hall, we do have a professional staff that we need to respect and work closely with, and that we do have people in the community who also have professional expertise and excitement about a range of issues, including improving bike and pedestrian accommodations, as as well as improving how we deal with climate change issues. So I believe the City Hall, City Council members need to have an open door and listen to everybody in striking the best deal possible for everybody.
The next one's actually done. Sorry, random one. It's actually
Should let one of us figure that out. So thank you very much. I'm John Knox-White. I'm running for City Council, and I'm here to ask for your support. People who know me, some of the people in this room know that I'm very passionate about transportation planning, and that the environment and climate is something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that I've worked very hard for it. This isn't because there's congestion in our tubes and our bridges, but because transportation and transportation policy is literally the thing that connects us as people, as a community, as creating safe and livable neighborhoods. And we have been doing it badly for the last decades, and leading us to the outcomes that we all sit around and complain about every single day. There's when I moved to the Bay Area, I attended a meeting of transit folks, and there was a pastor from Richmond who said something that I repeat to myself, and I repeat to my kids, and I repeat to people who listen to me often. If you always do what you have always done, you will always get what you already have. This election is going to be an election where you have a choice. You can make a choice to start us to move forward down a path where we do something different and we achieve the city we want to be, a city where people have choices and options to get around. Sometimes that option is driving, and sometimes that option is biking, and sometimes that option is transit, but people will have real choices where they feel safe, where they feel their kids are safe. The other choices, well, it's hard. We have to make trade-offs, and at the end of the day, the trade-off I'm always going to lean towards is not towards safety. It's not towards options. It's towards pushing more cars towards a constrained tube and bridge where we know the congestion is only going to get worse if we continue to move in that direction. I've shown myself to be a leader, an effective leader. Alameda Landing, 60% of people are not driving alone to work because of work that I and many others, including our very talented planning and transportation staff, have done. On climate, we have a sea level rise adaptation plan that is in the works because of leadership that I showed finally after 6 years, getting our city staff to say, oh, this is something we should work on. And now we have leaders like Lauren Azell working on that with our staff. When you go to the voting, whether it's by mail or whatever else, think about the city you want to have. Is it a safe city? Is it a place where families and seniors and everybody want to be, and it accommodates everybody, and people want to be outside near the street talking to each other? Or is it a city where everybody drives at 45 miles an hour and everybody feels unsafe, and we confuse things? We get confused about what our priorities are because it's hard for us to understand that sometimes change is difficult and we have to make hard decisions. You have people running for office today who have been in office for decades. We are not where we want to be. Make the choice wisely. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you for having me out. My name is Robert Matz. I'm running for City Council. I'm new, I'm different, and I think we need new and we need different. It would have been really easy for me to just fill out a questionnaire from Bike Walk Alameda and from CASA and just tell you what you want to hear. I love that bike bridge. Let's put that as the top priority, a number one priority. The climate action plan, let's just fully fund all of that. That's not who I am. I don't operate like that. I look at the facts and I have to tell the truth as I see it. And the truth is that I can help you and get you and your bikes off this island in a new way. And it's in a more affordable way. And it's not the only way. And it's not, something that's going to end all of our transit problems, but it is something that's doable. It's something that's there. We already have plans for it. It's been sitting there collecting dust. So let's get busy and let's get this done and start moving forward and giving us more options. I know that it's really hard. I'm new, and I come in and I've seen all the pictures of all the time that Bike Alameda has put into that bike bridge. And sitting in the lawn chairs and doing the petitions and, going to endless meetings. And it must be frustrating to have some new guy come in and say, well, that's not a good idea, after all that time. But we have to face facts. And those facts are that we have $230 million in unfunded pension liability, $300 million in deferred maintenance. We have homeless projects that need funding. We have affordable housing projects that need funding. We have free shuttle around the island projects that need funding. We have bus projects that need funding. We have climate change and emergency preparedness projects that need funding. They're on our work list. But relevant to the point, any politician that's going to tell you that they can just say yes to everything and give everybody the best of everything that they want is really selling you a bill of goods. And we cannot afford to make those choices. If our situation were different, we could, but we can't. So I'd like to focus on how we can get more people off this island and how we can get more people around this island, out of cars in a responsible way, in a way that helps the environment. And thank you very much. My name is Robert Matz, and I need your vote. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm last on the ballot, so I guess I'm last tonight. Thank you very much for having this forum. I really enjoy this part of the election season because we get a chance to meet with people and hear what's important to them. Little known fact, I don't know how many know this, but my first public service was on the Village of Tinley Park, Illinois, Bicycle Safety Commission. So these are things, when you brought up those items, it's like it should be a no-brainer because that was the thing that I did way back when I was 16 or 17. My name is Jim Odie. I'm a current council member. I'm asking for your vote for re-election. There's 2 seats, so you can vote for any of these fine gentlemen and vote for me at the same time. Another thing I really enjoy about the election season is going around and campaigning and knocking on doors and talking to voters and constituents. My daughter there, Sarah, she goes with me every day. Sometimes she's not happy, but I did one more last night and I got a yes, so that was good. But the things that they talk about are the things that I have an established record of fighting for you. One is making sure that we keep our island safe. I've been fighting to make sure we maintain our 911 emergency fire ambulance response times. And we built a new fire station so our female firefighters don't have to change out into the street. We have an emergency operations center on Grand, so when the big one does come, or when there is flooding, we have a place where we can manage that. We have an Alameda Class 1 fire department, the only one in the Bay Area. And what that means to you, besides lower property insurance rates, is that when your kid stops breathing in the middle of the night, or your mother or your grandmother suddenly has a heart attack or a stroke, or your husband or wife suddenly has a medical emergency, that when you dial 911, someone will be there. Not only will someone be there quickly, but they will be there, they will be qualified. And that saves lives. And that's my #1 priority. People also talk to me about housing. And we've done a lot on housing. The 3 projects that I just talked about, that's going to help deal with the housing crisis. We've also tried to fight for our rights for our most vulnerable residents, our tenants, our low income, our seniors. We've done a lot of that work. Transportation. People talk to me about the bus. We brought the Line 19 back. We brought a new ferry station to Alameda. And we paid for money out of our own pocket to do 20-minute headways on Line 19 instead of a half hour. Those are the things we're doing. I've been proud to fight for you. I will continue to fight for you, and I would be honored to have your support for another 4 years on City Council.
You talk to
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, all 5 of you, for coming out tonight. We really appreciate you all being here. With groups like CASA and Bike Lock, you're going to be getting into the weeds and the hard issues of what it really takes to run a city like Alameda. And I think appreciate everyone else for coming through and participating. I think Alameda has a lot of very engaged residents who really care about what's going on and really participate. So one more round of applause for everybody. We still around and talk to anyone who has follow-up questions. Thank you to Christy and Pat and Ruth and Denise for helping run this tonight. Great job. And we'll see you guys.